Hi everybody, we're back with the Age of Exploration. This is our second screencast lecture notes about the Age of Exploration. Last time we talked about the motivations for and the technology for exploration and colonization on the part of Europeans, mostly in the 16th century. And we also looked at Portugal and how they went about colonizing. So today we're going to move on to Spain. All right, so of course Spain starts off everything with Christopher Columbus. This is your big Spanish explorer guy, he's the guy who, we all celebrate and we have holidays and stuff like that. Of course, as I've said many times, he got his financing from Ferdinand and Isabella, and in 1492 he sailed the Ocean Blue. Eventually went on 4 expeditions, went through the Caribbean, the eastern coast of Central America, and all of that. But here's sort of like his big contribution is that he opened the door for the Spanish domination of the New World because he found all this stuff first. And you can see here, there he is, the navigator, the explorer, and here are his 4 voyages in 1492, 1493, 1498. And then 1502 to 1524, looking all around the Caribbean. Some of the things that happened, though, under Columbus have, brought him under a lot of scrutiny, especially in the last, let's say, 20 to 30 years. But even at his time, people were criticizing him. And his biggest critic was a guy named Bartolomeo de las Casas, who wrote a book just detailing all of the atrocities that went on in the colonies of the new Spanish Empire. And there's a lot about this ruthlessness, criticizing Columbus himself for a lot of the ruthlessness towards the native. He kind of gave this idea that there was a Catholic smokescreen around the whole thing. In other words, his impression is the Spanish used religion as an excuse to go in and do all of these nasty things to people. Here you got these people being lit on fire, they're still alive, that's not comfortable. Guy bashing a baby against a wall, this is not nice stuff. Basically he said that salvation was offered, not always in the best way, and anyone who denied it who denied Christianity, bam, they were just killed. Reality is Protestant countries were just as guilty of this as Catholic countries were. The treaty between Portugal and Spain, the New World was, or actually all of the world that was being quote-unquote discovered at the time, was under dispute. And so in 1494, the two countries come together and they agree on what's known as the Treaty of Tordesillas. And what it would do is it would divide the world into basically 2 domains. Everything to the west of the line was given to Spain. Everything to the east of the line was given to Portugal. Now, as part of this deal, Portugal gets rights to the slave trade, which becomes very lucrative, and they're widely criticized in a lot of areas of Africa on the west coast, much more so than the British, who eventually take it over near the end for sort of setting all of this stuff up. So there's this north-south line, and everything to the west is Spanish, and everything to the east is Portuguese. Essentially, Portugal got Brazil. That's, of course, in the New World, but they do also get all of the possessions in all the rights in the Spice Islands and trading in Africa. You can see this. I mean, if you're looking at the New World, this is like, wow, Spanish wins, or Spain wins. But if you're considering all of the trade that's going on along here, all of the spices that are coming out from here, it is why the Portuguese go along with it. Some Spanish explorers that you just might want to know. This is good fodder for for writing on the AP exam. Vasco Núñez de Balboa, great story. So in 1513, the guy crosses Panama, sort of near where the Panama Canal is today. He comes to the Pacific Ocean, and then he sort of like goes up to the sand there. He drops a flag in there and says, "I claim all of these lands that this ocean touches for Spain." And that's the Pacific Ocean, which is the largest ocean on the earth. And then, of course, there's Ferdinand Magellan, who has given the dubious honor of being the first person to circumnavigate the globe, although he didn't actually make it. He was killed in a conflict in the Philippines, but, you know, who cares? We'll just give him it anyway because his ship actually made it back. But it did give everyone an idea of just how big that Pacific Ocean was, and sort of what it entailed. Yeah, so here's Magellan. Very famously found the Straits of Magellan, which is a very difficult voyage through there, but charted his way through. And here he is trying to get in the midst of a war between warring tribes in the Philippines, and he gets killed, gives up his life. So then the Americas, of course. So in order to sort of consolidate Spanish holdings, the Spanish get conquerors to come in. These guys are not explorers. They're more akin to like a biker gang kind of group of people, sort of tough guys. But they've got to conquer these empires which exist in order to make sure that Spain has the area. In 1520, the largest empire in Central America, the Aztecs, were conquered by Hernan Cortez, who had between 500 and 600 guys, but of course had a lot of technology on his side, aided by disease, smallpox, which of course these natives had absolutely no immunity to, and aided by the fact that they saw him as the one of their gods, Quetzalcoatl. When they figured out he wasn't a god, they kicked him out of Tenochtitlan, which was the capital city, where it's now Mexico City. He then went in and conquered the whole place. And then the Incas were conquered by Francisco Pizarro with even fewer guys and an even larger empire. And of course, it was the disease and the use of deception that allowed him to conquer these things. So once they took over, or once they conquered these, they had to establish their own empire. So they conquer the regions, and then they subjugate the population, and they get the population involved in working. And the idea, the economic idea behind this is that of mercantilism, which really kind of says this. Colonies, first of all, exist to benefit the mother country. And really what is most important is they want these precious metals to be sent back to Spain so that Spain can use them to wage war against their enemies in Europe. So the mining is really, really important. But then from an economic standpoint, these two things actually will end up creating greater wealth, although not for Spain, than the gold and the silver. So the idea is this. You have your colony here, and they have raw materials. Raw materials are sent to the colonizing country. Colonizing country sends manufactured goods back to the colony, which people pay for, and the colonizing country gets wealthier. Of course, I keep using dollar signs, and they don't use dollars, but yeah. Now, there was, of course, a problem. The conquistadors were all given land. They were given almost total control over the people who lived on the land that they conquered. They divided it up between a lot of their men, and this led to a lot of exploitation. The Bartolomeo de las Casas book had a lot to do with this. Anyway, so the Spanish royalty decided that they needed to set up a system which was going to be more sustainable. And so they came up with this system known as the Comiendo System. And the idea was this, that a Spaniard would own land and that natives would work for them a few days a week. And what this did is this actually reduced the need to import slaves from Africa to the Spanish Empire. So the Spanish don't become a major importer of slaves. But of course, there's poor oversight. It's a huge area. They only divide all of really North and Central and South America into 4 areas. It's just impossible to govern that. So of course, there were abuses of the system. So again, they decided to go ahead and reform it again. And so the viceroyalties are set up: New Spain, New Granada, Peru, and Rio de la Plata. And each were led by a viceroy, and they had these judicial bodies called audiencias that would oversee and make sure that these abuses didn't happen against slaves. In terms of social structure inside of these colonies, you have a very pyramidal social structure. At the very top, you have these peninsulares, who are Spanish-born whites. They go to the colonies to work. They will return back to Spain when they're done. Then you have a group known as Creoles, who are whites that are born in the New World. They're the colonizers. They're the ones who stay. And then sort of here you have these mestizos, who are the children of the whites and the natives, because the whites, the Creoles, really intermarried with a lot of the natives, and they had children. These become the mestizos. And at the very bottom, this small group of slaves that lived there. There is also a small little portion of native tribes that do maintain their autonomy to a certain level throughout this period. So this is also true in Asia and Africa, so we're not just talking about the New World, obviously. Historians refer to this as the old imperialism, simply because the new imperialism of the 19th century, the 19th century, is very different. In Africa and Asia, it's trading posts and forts, okay? No one is trying to get the interior. No one's trying to subjugate the populations. This is not like the New World. Portugal are establishing all of these posts along the West African coast. They take them from Muslims. So, I mean, a lot of the forts are already there, but they're Muslim outposts, and the Portuguese take them. And Da Gama goes and establishes ports in India, mostly for trade. And, the idea here, and Albuquerque was a big player in this, is that the coastal regions would allow, all of these areas would allow for the control of really the Indian Ocean. And then, of course, the Spice Islands after 1510 become big. Until, of course, the Dutch come in. In 1602, the Dutch found the Dutch East India Company, and the Dutch Republic, being sort of a non-centralized, a more constitutional system, a republic. This wasn't financed by the government itself. This is one of those joint stock companies. But this company is able to actually knock the Portuguese out of the Spice Islands and take them over for the Dutch. By 1650, they start challenging Spain in the New World. They start controlling much of the slave trade. I mean, this is incredibly successful for a company made up of investors. The French come in quite a bit later. 1608 is the founding of Quebec. Jacques Cartier is the guy who explores the St. Lawrence River. And the French usually, aside from Quebec, are really into trading. So they're going to set up trading posts up and down even the Mississippi, going as far south as New Orleans, where they're going to trade with Native American tribes for goods. And finally, England, the last ones to show up. Now, John Cabot was an earlier explorer who explored the northeast coast of North America. There's no gold, there's no silver. Henry VIII has other things going on, and we've talked about those in the past. So he says, you know what, this isn't such a big idea. But in 1607, you have the first permanent settlement at Jamestown. And then, of course, there's a large migration that comes at Jamestown. Then you have the Pilgrims or the Separatists going to Plymouth Rock. Pennsylvania gets founded as a place of religious freedom. Gosh, I left this on here, but they've taken it off of YouTube. If you can find it, there is a very good sketch on horrible histories called the Pilgrim Rap, and it talks about the New World, and it's pretty entertaining. So anyway, that's sort of most of the story of colonization and exploration. We'll take a look finally at the effects of this on both the explorers and the colonizers and those who are colonized in the next lecture. So I hope these are helping, and my name is Paul Sargent. Have a great day.